Great to see you back in person.
Thank you.
Honourable Member for Niagara West.
The COVID-19 pandemic has been difficult for all Canadians. Our lives have changed, and no one knows when things will go back to normal and what that new normal will look like. Many Canadians have lost their jobs. Many small business owners have had to close their doors. Too many have lost a loved one to the virus. And I'm concerned this government hasn't responded well in helping those most affected. In Wednesday's throne speech, the government made no mention of the deep and worrisome challenge experienced by our friends in Western Canada and our world-class resource sector. Electric cars are fabulous, but they're unlikely to keep our country united. There was also no commitment to increase desperately needed health transfers, and provinces were very clear of the need for increased funding. We're also falling behind our allies when it comes to rapid COVID-19 testing. I'm hopeful that we can emerge from the COVID era stronger and more united than ever, but to do this, we need this government to provide real support where it is critically needed, and do so now.
L'honorable député d'Orléans.
The Honourable Member for Orléans. Mr. Speaker, today the Franco-Ontarian community is celebrating Franco-Ontarians' critical contribution and unique history in Ontario and elsewhere in our country. This morning in Orléans, I had the honour of participating in a flag-raising ceremony with Francophone leaders and my colleagues, MPP Stephen Blais and municipal councillors Laura Dudas and Mathieu Luloff. Since 2010, the 25th of September has been Franco-Ontarian Day. This is in memory of the first time the Franco-Ontarian flag was raised in Sudbury 45 years ago today. I'm a proud Franco-Ontarian. I join my voice to yours. Together, let us celebrate our culture, our heritage, and the French language. Let us continue to promote it. And let us all celebrate the deep contribution of the Francophone community to Ontario and to the rest of our country. Mr. Speaker, we are, we will be.
Hamilton Centre.
Mr. Speaker, justice delayed is justice denied. This government has had all the power to immediately act on the priorities outlined by the Black Caucus and supported by over 150 MPs, senators, and cabinet ministers. Yet from procurement to policing, they have failed. From banning street checks to racial profiling, they have refused. In my short time here, it's becoming clear that at every turn and every crisis, Liberals make promises that they have no intention of keeping. They use the words like equity and the language of racial justice in the speech from the throne. But absent of taking immediate action, the words of Liberals remain empty and meaningless. To be clear, it is not the goodwill of this Liberal government that forced addressing systemic racism. It was the tens of thousands of Canadians taking to the streets, led by the BLM movement, demanding that this government move beyond performative acts of social justice and just act now.
Member for Oakville North Burlington. I believe you're on mute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. 40 years ago, a brave young man embarked on a marathon of hope to find a cure for cancer. Terry Fox inspired a nation. On September 20th, Canadians from coast to coast to coast celebrated the 40th anniversary by taking part their way. While this year's Terry Fox run was different and distant, it still remains Canada's largest one-day fundraiser for cancer research. People still get cancer in spite of the pandemic, and the need for cancer research remains just as important. My colleague, the member for Scarborough Agincourt, walked in honor of her late husband, Arnold Chan. Survivor Lisa Moody joined her family for a 5K walk in her neighborhood. Team Darrow raised over $14,000 this year while logging over 6,000 kilometers. In Oakville, we are hosting an art auction, which you can check out at oakvillechallenge.com. As Terry said, anything is possible if you try.
Member for Central Okanagan, Similkameen Nicola.
Mr. Speaker, it seems one of the Prime Minister's new buzzwords is austerity. Now, I'm not entirely certain how he defines austerity, but at minimum, I think we all can agree cutting anything to him is austerity. In his nonpartisan TV speech, this Prime Minister stated that now is not the time for austerity. While I find it puzzling because in my riding and in 48 other ridings across Canada, this Liberal government wants to kill the automated 24-hour VHF weather service. They say that you can get the same information from a smartphone. But here's the problem. Because of the other broken promises from this Prime Minister, there are lakes and backcountry areas where there is still no wireless signal available, and that can place people in danger. And Mr. Speaker, if the VHF infrastructure is already in place and operating, until this Prime Minister fulfills his promises to ensure that all regions of Canada are connected by the same wireless services, I'm asking this Liberal government.
Member for Edmonton Centre.
Mr. Speaker, the need for rapid testing for COVID-19 is not a request, nor is something we can negotiate on. These are the facts. Canada's unemployment surged to 13.7 this summer. NAV Canada announced it's cutting another 14% of its workforce this week. And hundreds of small businesses across this country have been forced to shut down since March. We have come to the point in the timeline where we have accepted we will have to live with COVID for the foreseeable future. We must improvise, we must adapt, we must overcome. Yet despite various pilot programs funding rapid test research across Canada and numerous countries around the world using innovative rapid testing methods, our government is napping on the possibility of getting our country back to relative working order. On behalf of the country's airlines, our nation's mums, dads, loved ones who have been separated for months, restaurant owners, workers, retailers, employees, I urge the government to wake up and signal the green light for rapid testing, not tomorrow, not next week, now.
The honourable member for Don Valley North.
Thank you, Speaker. I rise today to mark the centennial of the Treaty of Sevres signed at the end of the First World War. As part of the larger Versailles peace settlement, the treaty made a commitment to try Ottoman officials for perpetrating the Armenian genocide and to set the borders of the Republic of Armenia by including the historic Armenian provinces into its sovereign territory under the protection of the Allied powers. Though often overlooked in our history, Canada played a major role in assisting the Armenian population during the genocide. At the time, prominent Canadians, British politicians, and intellectuals called for Canada to assume the mandate for Armenia. Unfortunately, that project was never realized. Today, I join thousands of Armenian Canadians in Don Valley North and across Canada to commemorate this important chapter in our collective history and commit to a just resolution for the Armenian genocide. Thank you.
Oral questions. Question orale, l'honorable député de...
The honourable member for Louis Saint-Laurent. Mr. Speaker, the role of the Prime Minister is to unite Canadians, especially in a crisis as we are going through right now. But on the contrary, the Prime Minister is showing just how arrogant he is with regard to the provinces. Instead of bringing everyone together, he's giving lessons in a way that is irresponsible and disrespectful. Yesterday, the Prime Minister of Canada gave lessons to the Premier of Quebec. Insulting the Premier means insulting Quebecers. Why is the Canadian Prime Minister being so irresponsible? The honourable member. Mr. Speaker, when you look at the speech from the throne, which is an excellent one, and which includes, for instance, daycare. Quebec already has its daycare system. Of course, we take that into account. And in fact, it's a model for us for other provinces, and Quebec will get its fair share through negotiations. That's clear. The other point my friend has referred to is seniors. Seniors don't belong to any jurisdiction. They are people who have suffered more than anyone else during the pandemic. The honourable member. Well, that's right, Mr. Speaker. Since Quebec has its daycare system. Why? Because this falls under provincial jurisdiction. It's up to the provinces to decide. The federal government should not dictate to the provinces what to do. Yesterday, when I asked the Prime Minister questions about Western Canada and why Western Canadians are so upset, he said, that's ridiculous. Ridiculous. Mr. Speaker, not only has he offended Quebecers, but also Western Canadians. Why is the Canadian Prime Minister being so irresponsible towards all Canadians? Mr. Speaker, the speech from the throne contains very positive things for all Canadians. When you read the speech from the throne and you go through all of its elements, it's clear that we are in a pandemic, and it is the priority of the government is to protect the health and safety of all Canadians. So I would like to reach out to my friend, and I would ask him, instead of fighting over jurisdictions or just generally fighting, let's work together, Mr. Speaker, to help our seniors, to help our businesses, and to help those who have lost their jobs. Let's do all of this together. The honourable member for Louis Saint-Laurent.
Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the government tabled a piece of legislation a few days ago, Bill C2, and obviously we want to work correctly on that. We made a proposition a few hours ago with our all counterparts here. To be sure to work correctly, we mean to have a sitting house here for a committee of the whole this Sunday. Is the government is ready to work on Sunday for the good and wealth of the future of the Canadians?
The Honourable Minister.
Speaker, the government is working 7 days a week for Canadians. The government's working all the time for Canadians, Mr. Speaker. We'll analyze what my colleague has offered, and through discussions we can get to do a lot of things, and that's why we insisted so much to be able to be here and also present virtually, so all MPs could participate. And I'm glad that they agree, that they finally agree, Mr. Speaker. We can do a lot of things together with goodwill.
Honourable member for Calgary, Nose Hill.
Yesterday, the Minister of Health said, quote, that she would rely on the expertise of researchers, scientists, and experts to guide us on the matter of rapid testing. But experts, researchers, and scientists in other developed countries have already approved rapid and at-home testing. So this begs the question, if we're collaborating with these experts, researchers, and scientists on things like a vaccine, why can't we use it for rapid testing? When will the review of rapid testing be complete in Canada?
The Honourable Minister.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for the question. And I obviously share the member's deep desire to have more sophisticated tools to be able to respond to COVID-19, including more sophisticated testing capacity. Of course, there's not one single rapid test solution, and testing is a complex space. But I will tell you what I do know. We need to rely on Canadian regulators who will tell us when a test is safe enough and accurate enough to be released into Canadian society, because, of course, tests that don't provide accurate responses could make situations way worse. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Calgary, Nose Hill.
The minister needs to realize there are people waiting for 8 to 10 days to get their results. And it's her job to go into her department and say, hey, what's taking so long? Why can't we do this quickly and fulsomely? Make it happen. It's not enough to share a desire, Mr. Speaker. She is in charge of this. She's got to go read the Riot Act to her bureaucrats and get this done. When will the review be complete?
Honourable Minister.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Unlike the member opposite, I'm incredibly grateful to the bureaucrats, as she calls them, the researchers, the scientists, the civil service, who has
we're on mute. We haven't heard anything. The Honourable Minister, if she can check her connection. L'honorable député de La Prairie.
The honourable member for La Prairie. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday, we saw just how condescending the Prime Minister was. Who does he think he is to give lessons to Quebec with regard to the presence of armed forces in long-term care homes? Quebec taxpayers, in fact, pay for the armed forces. Why are we in this situation today? Because for 25 years, the federal government has made cuts to health care. They're the ones who are at fault, not the government of Quebec. If the federal government had listened to Quebecers, experts, or common sense, they would have invested in health care. Instead of giving lessons, why is this government not increasing health care transfers? Before continuing, I would like to remind members, and I know that We've only just started our work again. Please refer to members by their ridings, not their names. The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, again, my colleague is trying to create dissent between Quebec and Ottawa. I said so yesterday, and I still maintain, and I say this from the bottom of my heart, Mr. Speaker. Our seniors are not a line in the Constitution. They are not a jurisdiction. These are flesh and bones human beings who have suffered more than anyone else in this pandemic, and we will be there for them. The Honourable Member for La Prairie. Mr. Speaker, the Leader of the Government has missed something. What was disdainful yesterday was not the Quebec government or anyone else. It was the federal prime minister who was trying to give lessons to others. He talked about a blank check. Well, he gave a $900 million blank check to his charity friends. That's writing a blank check. Will they increase healthcare transfers? Yes or no? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, we've made significant investments in healthcare. We will keep on making those investments, be it in Quebec or elsewhere in Canada. However, here we are specifically talking about national standards, and we're talking about a dialogue we want to have with the provinces. We want to share common objectives. Of course, the provinces manage their own healthcare sectors, but it is extremely hurtful to reduce seniors to a jurisdictional issue. They are human beings. They have a right to healthcare dignity and good healthcare services.
Merci, Monsieur.
The Honourable Member for Burnaby South.
Decided to prorogue government, and in doing so had almost 2 months to plan for a second wave, which we knew was coming. Now we're in the second wave, and this government has really no plan to deal with the crucial questions that people are faced with right now. What is this government doing to ensure people have access to testing? What are they doing to make sure people who need childcare have access to it? And what are they doing to make sure that our seniors, those who were ground zero for COVID-19, are protected? And finally, how is this government going to ensure that it's not everyday families that pay the price for the recovery, but it's those who have profited off this pandemic who pay the price?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I certainly apologize for losing connection during the last question. To the member opposite, as the member knows, we have been there every step of the way with Canadians, with provinces, with territories, in fact, with local communities to make sure that we have a robust response to COVID-19, that we can together work to protect and save lives of Canadians. We will continue that work in collaboration with all levels of government, with indeed Canadians, because that's how we will get through this together.
Member for Burnaby South.
Merci, Monsieur.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Because of the fact that the Liberal government and the Prime Minister shut down Parliament, they had almost 2 months to plan their response to a second wave. Well, now we're in the second wave, but what's the plan? What's the plan to address the issues which still are not fixed? For instance, testing, long-term health care, and senior care. What is the plan the federal government has to ensure that there is no profiting from this pandemic? Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the question. We have worked very hard with the provinces and the territories and with local governments.
Incredibly hard with all levels of government and indeed with Canadians to ensure that we can respond to COVID-19 together, no matter what the virus throws at us. Mr. Speaker, this is a rapidly evolving situation, as you know, and of course the tools and the knowledge to defeat COVID-19 continue to evolve, and we will be there, Mr. Speaker, for Canadians and for communities, no matter what COVID-19 throws at us.
Member for...
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The reality is that we are cleaning up the mess the Conservatives have left us with regard to official languages. we're not only cleaning up the mess at the federal level, but also the mess at the provincial level, including the mess left behind by Doug Ford. Now, Jason Kenney is, in fact...
Long before COVID-19, the Liberals promised to put people first by investing in public transit. Nowhere is the need greater than the Yonge subway extension. With 1.2 million residents and over 636,000 jobs, York Region is one of Canada's largest municipalities, but still has no Yonge subway. This is the top priority for the residents in my riding and for all of York Region, but the Liberals aren't listening. When will this government deliver critical infrastructure funds for the Yonge subway extension?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we have a bilateral agreement with Ontario that sees the federal government investing a historic $11.8 billion in Ontario over the next decade, including $8.3 billion for public transit. We need to be working with the government of Ontario and with local governments, and we've asked the government of Ontario to submit business cases on their major GTA transit lines, including the Premier's preferred Ontario line, so that we can actually move forward and expedite funding decisions.
Member for Aurora Oak Ridges, Richmond Hill.
And yet the Ontario government has already committed to the funding for the Yonge subway extension. The Yonge subway extension would create over 60,000 jobs and enable housing for 88,000 residents. It would drastically reduce greenhouse gas emissions by taking over 3,000 buses a day off the streets. York Region keeps asking, but this government remains silent. When will this government create jobs and protect the environment and fund the Yonge subway extension?
Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, it's always nice to hear Conservatives talk about the importance of protecting the environment. That is a top priority for us, and that's why we're investing in public transit. I would certainly encourage the Government of Ontario to bring a business case for it, because I know how much Conservatives care about taxpayer dollars, so we need to actually have the details so that we can move forward on an important project that will create jobs, that will reduce congestion, and that will improve the lives of people in Ontario.